The rain that night was not weather. It was a verdict. It came down in sheets that erased edges, curbs, rules, regrets. I had left a dinner where men toasted me with adjectives, and I told my driver to take the long way because sometimes the only honest thing I own is a wet sidewalk. That's when I saw the bus shelter, flickering light, plexiglass freckled by city grit, and a small boy sitting perfectly still, as if stillness were a spell that kept wolves away. He couldn't have been more than 8. He wore a navy hoodie 2 sizes too big and sneakers that had learned to drink rain. He clutched something in both hands, head bowed as if the paper could heat him by conviction alone. "Hey," I said, stopping just inside the meager roofline. "You lost, or just stubborn?" He looked up with eyes that knew how to ration trust. "I need to go home," he said. No please, no explanation, a fact presented to the court. "What's home?" I asked, lowering my voice to the register children lend to honesty. He unfolded the damp paper. It was a bus ticket, edges furred from being folded and refolded, the ink wicking into the pulp like a small midnight. He tapped the destination with one wet finger. "Juniper Gardens. My aunt is there. She's sick. She said if it rains and I get scared, I should come home." "What's your name?" "Mason," he said. "Mason Reed." He didn't ask for mine. In his world, names were not currency. "I'm Evan," I almost said. "Evan Hale, the man whose last name appears in headlines and on charity plaques and in emails that try to sell better versions of time. But he didn't need that. He needed a car and a door and a way to stop raining inside his chest. "Okay, Mason," I said. "Let's get you home." He hesitated, glancing past me, as if expecting the bus to manifest righteousness out of steam. I knelt and held out my hand for the ticket. He gave it up like a knight handing over a sword, reluctant but relieved to be done fighting alone. I called my driver and told him to swing to the corner. When the sedan slid up to the curb, Mason climbed in without comment, soaking the leather with a defiance I admired. "Seatbelt," I said. He clicked it with a small ceremony. "Where are your parents?" I asked when the city started moving again. His gaze did not flinch. "They died. Car crash. It was last winter. My Aunt Claire takes care of me. She says we're a team." The words arrived plain, like blocks stacked carefully. He'd learned that when you can't afford drama, you pay with clarity. Claire. The name landed like a reopened door. My thumb found the hairline crack in my watch face, the one I never repair because guilt likes souvenirs. "Is she alone?" "Yeah." He pressed the ticket flat on his knee with both palms, as if blessing it. "She's sick. Real sick. She coughs at night, and in the mornings, she says she's fine, but the air looks thin." Dr. Lynn's number lived at the top of my favorites. I typed out a message I'd sent more times than I like to admit. "Home visit, respiratory distress, urgent." I hit send before the part of me that hates owing anything could vote. Juniper Gardens was one of those buildings that survives by arguing with weather. A light burned weakly in a third-floor window, the kind of bulb you squeeze a few more weeks out of because money is a list and light bulbs are selfish. Mason led me up the stairwell at a pace he thought looked brave. At the door, he took out a key on a rubber fob shaped like an orange and hesitated. "You can knock," I said. "Sometimes home needs a warning." He opened the door. The apartment smelled like eucalyptus and old laundry heat. On a bookshelf made of milk crates sat a mason jar of cough drops, a chipped mug, and, like a trapdoor, an old Polaroid in a thrift store frame. 2 kids at Blue Hour on a dock, her head on his shoulder, their eyes bright with the arrogance of believing time is a pet. Claire. I felt the floor tilt. She'd written her name on the back once, Claire, in block letters, and in the corner, a date from a decade ago, like a dare. I had kept my copy until the day I learned you can't store the past in a box without it molding into something else. She had kept hers, or it had kept her. Claire, Mason called, voice too bold for his size. It's me. We found her propped against pillows in the bedroom, skin bleached thin by fever, oxygen in her posture, if not yet delivered by machine. She looked at Mason first and softened. Love is the fastest medicine. Then she saw me, and the room smudged. Rage, memory, laughter from another life. They crossed her face in a quiet riot. Evan, she said, like a diagnosis. Claire, I said, like a confession. Mason climbed onto the bed. I brought help, he reported, as if presenting a project to a strict teacher. She tried to sit up and coughed a sound that made Mason flinch. My hand was at her back before permission could catch up. You can't be here, she managed. Not you. I already am, I said, and I squeezed her hand with 2 fingers, the way we used to talk when words were too expensive. Dr. Lin is on her way, insurance. I know a different kind of math now, I cut in. The truth surprised me with its own voice. The buzzer rasped. Dr. Lin stepped into the apartment like competence-wearing sneakers. Pulse ox, auscultation, questions that cornered nonsense and forced it to sit still. Severe pneumonia, she said. Admit tonight. Imaging, 4 antibiotics, steroids. You waited too long. Claire's eyes were dry in a way that means a person has already cried the amount allotted for the quarter. I couldn't leave him, she nodded to Mason, and I couldn't afford being sick in public. I called in a favor at a hospital that usually requires donations before compassion. We rode down the stairwell, the 3 of us, like a new constellation that had not yet learned its name. In the car, Mason pressed his forehead to the glass and fogged the city into kinder shapes. Claire leaned against me for a single step's worth of seconds when we transferred her to the gurney, and behind the professional choreography of EMTs, my heart clapped like a child who finally sees the trick. In triage, the lights were a winter, no-jacket fixes. Machines attached themselves with greedy efficiency, stealing metrics out of skin they hadn't earned. Claire watched the ceiling like it might give her another answer if she stared long enough. I set the Polaroid on the tray table, face down at first, then turned it over. You kept that, I said. I kept what you didn't, she said. It turns out leaving is a habit. So is keeping. Her eyes slid to Mason. He's the habit that saved me. I signed forms with the care I had never gifted investors. Dr. Lin squeezed my shoulder. The kind of permission you don't get to buy. She's strong, she said. Let the medicine argue with the infection. Your job is to argue with the bureaucracy. I'm very good at that. It's one of the few talents I own that can be used for mercy. At midnight, after the room beeped itself into a rhythm that didn't scare me, I walked Mason to the family lounge. He fell asleep with his head in my lap, bus ticket clutched like an oath. Through the glass, I watched Claire sleep, her breath hitching, her body deciding privately whether to stay. I have spent an adult life dressing in success and learning to pass as inevitable. But in that fluorescent hour, under a rain that refused to run out, I understood a simpler arithmetic. 1 boy, 1 woman, 1 soaked man who had finally remembered the verb that matters. Stay. Hospitals at night reorganize the soul. The vending machines glow like false prophets, and the hallways are a grammar that only nurses speak. Claire's room was bay 7, which seemed fitting. 7 had been our number once, 7 promises, 7 almosts, 7 years since we'd said each other's names without flinching. "Breathe, Doctor," Lynn coached, stethoscope steady. Again. The sound in Claire's chest was a storm trying to move furniture. Mason stayed close enough to cast a shadow on her blanket. His backpack, a small, stubborn square, was wedged against the chair leg. A social worker named Dana materialized with forms, a practiced gentleness, and a pen that apologized for itself. "Do you have someone who can care for Mason while Claire is admitted?" she asked, eyes traveling from my watch to my face and stopping at the latter, to her credit. "I do," I said. "Me. We'll need a background check for temporary guardianship," she said. "A home visit. It's not an accusation. It's a ritual." "Run whatever you need to run," I answered. "I'm better at rituals than I look." Claire tried to argue and coughed instead. I held the water cup, with the straw angled right, a muscle memory I didn't know I still owned. "You don't have to," she began. "I know," I said. "I want to." Mason regarded me with the skeptical relief of a kid who has seen adults blow away like umbrellas in the first gust. "You can make grilled cheese?" he asked, because children understand the true currencies. "I can burn it perfectly," I said solemnly. He nodded, as if I'd passed a test I hadn't known to study for. By morning, steroids had bullied open a bit more air. Claire slept, mouth softened, a color like hope flirting with her cheeks. Dr. Lin laid out the plan as if we were building a bridge. 3 days of IV antibiotics, aggressive breathing exercises, a scan in the afternoon. "She'll hate the nebulizer," she predicted. "Tell her it's a dragon she has to befriend." "I only befriend dragons that let me win," Claire muttered, without opening her eyes. We laughed, too loud for the quiet hour. It woke the kind of courage you can't bottle. In the cafeteria, I watched my board meeting on mute. Kane March, our CFO, a man who believed numbers should replace nouns, walked the directors through a slide deck that sold off our community clinic like a spare tire. I unmuted when he said my name. "Evan's distracted," he commented, smile polite enough to be lethal. "We need decisive leadership." I dialed in. "Decisive would be not closing the clinic during a respiratory crisis," I said. "I'll fund the shortfall personally for 12 months. We restructure with community input. Then we vote. You can't keep rescuing things with your wallet," Kane replied. "It's bad governance." "What's bad governance is pretending spreadsheets absolve us from humanity," I said. "Call the vote." General Counsel cleared her throat. This was still a corporation, not a sermon. But the motion passed. Money can't fix everything, but sometimes it can hold the door while the real work gets inside. Back upstairs, Mason had built a fort out of 2 chairs and a blanket. "Defense," he announced. "You be a fence." "I've been a fence my whole life," I said. "Maybe it's time to learn defense." He handed me a crayon, like a baton. We drew a map of the world that began and ended at Bay 7. In the center, he glued the bus ticket with a strip of medical tape, face up this time, like a flag. I wanted to tell him flags start wars. I kept the truth that mattered. Sometimes they end them. That afternoon, a volunteer wheeled in a book cart. Claire picked a slim volume of poems and a children's book about constellations. "Old light that refuses to quit," she read, and Mason repeated it softly, trying on the words like armor. When they slept, I walked down to the chapel, where candles pretended to keep score. I don't pray, but I do bargain. I offered the universe the only currency I have left that feels like it buys anything. I will stay, I promised, I will not choose flight over fight, optics over obligations, applause over a small boy's bedtime. I will learn boring. I will learn again the grammar of we. On my way back, I passed the volunteer cart again and saw, tucked between two donations, a Polaroid camera with a pack of unspent film. I borrowed it with a note that said, I owed them a story. In Claire's room, I snapped a picture. Mason asleep with his fist around the ticket, Claire's hand on his hair, my watch in the corner, cracked face, catching fluorescent light. The photo developed slowly, as if the chemistry needed to consult the past. I propped it on the tray table next to the old doc picture. 2 squares, 2 decades. Between them, a corridor that had felt like a lifetime until the rain made it a hallway. On day 2, bureaucracy shook our hands and asked for proof we were telling the truth. Dana returned with a folder, the color of compromise. Temporary guardianship approved pending home visit, she said. I'll stop by tonight. We look in the fridge. We ask rude questions nicely. We make sure there's a bed that isn't a couch. Library, Mason announced. Best Fort wins. My apartment had the kind of quiet you can lease only if you've sold your time already. When we walked in, Mason removed his shoes without being told and left 2 fog prints on the window like signatures. I spread blankets between bookshelves and rescued a box of contraband childhood from the back of a closet. A tin robot, a scuffed baseball, a compass that pretends to point north but actually points backward. What's that? He asked. It tells you where you've been, I said. Useful when you're trying not to go there again. He nodded as if I'd told him the location of a secret door. We wrote fort rules with a thick marker on printer paper and taped them to the shelf. No lying, no leaving without a note. Snacks are diplomacy. Offense and defense switch daily. He added a 5th after a thoughtful pause. 5. Bedtime stories must be true or close enough. Dana arrived at 5 with a smile that had been rained on and dried. She opened my refrigerator and found blueberries, 4 kinds of mustard, and a failing bachelor's theory of nutrition. I ordered groceries with the speed of a man filling a hole he had only just noticed. This is nice, she said, looking around the library. How long have you known Claire? Since time wore different shoes, I said. We were good at being poor together. I left to be good at something else. Are you good at staying? She asked, not unkindly. I'm learning, I said. My teacher is 8. When she left, I called the hospital. Claire sounded better, less static, more woman. Don't make the fort too good, she warned, or I'll never get him out of it. Come home and declare eminent domain, I said. She was quiet a beat. Evan. Yeah? Thank you for showing up. Without a speech, I looked at the Polaroid I'd taken beside the one from the dock. I haven't earned a speech, I said. I'm trying to earn a chair. That night, after Mason fell asleep under a city of books, I opened the small fireproof box in my closet and took out a ring. Steel, plain, engraved on the inside with a single word, stay. I bought it the year after we broke and never gave it to anyone, like a superstition. It felt heavy in my palm, the way unsentences do. I didn't take it to the hospital. Not yet. Promises are more delicate than glass. They need air and a place to sit before they're asked to stand. In the morning, Mason appeared in the kitchen, wearing my tie as a cape. He saluted with a butter knife. Defense today, he declared. Dragons beware. I burned the grilled cheese just enough to pass inspection. We took a photo of our crimes and texted it to Claire, who sent back a picture of her hospital breakfast with the caption, "This is not food." At lunch, Kane called to congratulate me on the optics of funding the clinic. Press loves a billionaire who remembers the poor, he said. I didn't remember the poor, I said. I remembered a woman and a boy. The rest is arithmetic. He sighed like I'd betrayed a fraternity. You can't build policy from sentiment. You can't build a city without it, I said, and hung up before he could recite the quarterly rites. That evening, Mason and I FaceTimed Claire. We showed her the fort, the compass, the fort rules. She added one more, 6. Ask for help before you're drowning. Mason wrote it down carefully and underlined before twice. Then he held the camera so close, I saw only one eye and a patch of freckles. We're a team, he told her. But Evan is offense and defense at the same time. Then teach him to rest, she said. Teams that don't rest, lose. After the call, I stood at the window and watched the city braid itself into night. The ring warmed in my pocket like a small animal remembering its job. In the library, Mason snored, the compass under his pillow, its needle pointing backward to a dock where 2 kids promised each other a future and then let go. The rain had stopped. The weather inside me had not, or maybe it had finally started. Claire came home on the 4th day with a paper bracelet cut from her wrist and a laugh that returned in short sentences. We built her a throne out of pillows inside the fort. Mason declared her Queen of Defense. She accepted the title with mock gravity and then fell asleep, with her hand in his hair, the way monarchs have always ruled. Dr. Lin visited and left a plan that read like a recipe. Inhalers, exercises, follow-up in a week, and boredom generously applied. Healing is mostly dull, she said. People think it's fireworks. It's dishwashing. I can do dishes, I said. Claire smirked. I'll take pictures, she said, just in case. Kane arrived unannounced, because men like him treat calendars as mirrors. He stood in my doorway in a suit that cost more than 3 months of rent on Juniper Gardens and looked at the fort like it had personally offended his thesis. You're late to the board call, he said. Zurich expects you. Zurich can learn to wait, I said. We have an empire of pillows to defend. He walked around the Polaroids and the compass and the bus ticket, arranged together now in a cheap frame Mason and I had bought at the drugstore. You're building a museum to sentiment, Kane said. Investors prefer museums that appreciate. I prefer families that do, I said. He set his leather portfolio on the counter, a practiced punctuation. There's an offer on the table to spin off the logistics arm. 9 figures. We need your signature. I looked at Claire. She raised an eyebrow that said, prove your verbs. I'm not signing, I told him. Not until we attach wage protections and a community stake. I'm done pretending profit margins and human beings don't belong in the same sentence. Kane's smile did a thing I've seen wolves practice in the woods. You're soft now, he said. I can't tell if that's love or weakness. They're the same color until you stand in the right light, I said. Either way, it's warmer than whatever you're selling. He left with the portfolio and the scent of expensive disapproval. Claire watched the door close and then pressed the back of her hand to her mouth and laughed until she coughed. You are always good with words, she said when she could breathe again. I was always better with you, I said, surprising us both. That night, after Mason fell asleep, I brought out the Polaroid camera and set it on the coffee table beside the ring box. I was going to bring this to the hospital, I confessed. It didn't feel fair to ask you for a future while your lungs were negotiating with the present. Claire looked at the ring, the word engraved inside it, hidden but loud. Open it, she said. I did. The metal caught the lamplight and kept it. She didn't put it on. She didn't send it away. She placed a fingertip inside the circle and traced the word, then closed the lid. "Stay," she said softly, returning the word to me to see if I meant it. "I do," I said. "Not a proposal, not yet. A declaration without ceremony." We took a picture then. No filters, no flattering angles. Just three people on a couch with bad posture and better intentions. It developed slowly, like we did. In the morning, the elevator broke, which is how the universe tests romances. I carried groceries up 6 flights, while Mason chanted, "Offense, defense," like a parade. Claire timed her breaths to the landings and glared at the stairs until they moved out of her way. We ate cereal for dinner and called it a feast. It was. Recovery, it turns out, has homework. We measured it in stairs climbed without stopping, in cups of tea made and drunk, in coughs that arrived late and left early. Claire kept a notebook where she recorded victories like a scientist. 2 sats, minutes walked, naps resisted. Mason added stickers for days that deserved fireworks. At the end of week 1, Dana visited to close out temporary guardianship and discuss the next sentence. "If you both want," she said, "we can petition for joint legal guardianship. It won't change day to day. It changes the nouns lawyers use when they talk about you." Claire looked at me, a question in the corner of her mouth. I nodded. "I'm not just visiting a story," I said. "I live here." Mason made a new fort rule. 7. Papers are part of love. We posted it next to the compass and laughed until we didn't. School sent home a flyer about a planetarium night. "You promised," Mason said, holding it up like a contract. The word made my ribs ache. We went. The dome opened like a rib cage, and the guide spoke about stars with the reverence of someone who had run out of better gods. Orion watched us, bow forever drawn. "He's hunting home," Mason whispered. Claire squeezed my hand. It felt like the ring turning itself from metal into verb. After, on the terrace, the city glittered like a currency I finally understood. I opened the ring box again, this time without fear, and held it between us and the sky. "I'm not asking for a wedding," I said. "I'm asking for the boring days, the grocery lists, the parent-teacher nights, the fights about nothing, the apology pancakes. I'm asking to stay." Claire took the ring and didn't put it on. She placed it in her pocket, like you put a stone there when you need proof a place existed. "Yes to the boring days," she said. "Yes to the staying. The rest will let arrive on its own feet." Back home, we hung the framed triptych, Polaroid of now, Polaroid of then, bus ticket, above the fort. Mason stood on the couch to make sure it was straight. "Family crest," he declared. "We need a motto." "Ask for help before you're drowning," Claire said. "Snacks are diplomacy," Mason countered. "Stay," I said. We wrote all 3 on an index card and taped it below the frame. Crests are allowed more than one truth. Kane called to say Zurich had turned its smile into a scowl. "You're hard to schedule," he said. "Markets crave predictability." "They can invest in the weather," I said. "It rains when it wants, and no one complains." "Shareholders aren't clouds." "Neither are we," I said, and hung up because Mason was asking me how to spell constellation, and that felt like a better use of language. That night, while I washed dishes and Claire dried, Mason built a new addition to the fort, a narrow tunnel made of boxes that required you to crawl. "It's a test," he explained, "to see if grown-ups can fit into small spaces." We could. We did. On the other side, we found him waiting with a flashlight and 3 cups of lukewarm tea. "Welcome to Defense 2, he announced. Claire laughed so hard she needed the inhaler. I timed her breaths because that's one of the only things I know how to do right now that feels like love. Family court is where hope and paperwork shake hands. The room looked tired of stories, but ours took a seat anyway. The judge, hair like granite, eyes like glass that had seen fires, flipped through our file and asked 3 questions that mattered. Do you love him? Will you stay? Can you prove both when it's boring? Yes, Claire said to all 3. Yes, I said, and felt the word land somewhere behind my ribs with a weight that changed how I stood. Mason wore a collared shirt under his hoodie and held the compass in one pocket like a coin. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he straightened and said, "We already have rules." He recited them, all 7, and added an 8th on the spot. 8. Tell the truth, even if it's messy. The court stenographer smiled without moving her mouth. The stamp came down. Joint legal guardianship granted. No confetti fell, but the room felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window. Outside, Dana hugged us in a way that said she'd learned not to hug in court, but was making an exception. "You'll be fine," she said. "People underestimate boring. It's the miracle everyone misses." We celebrated with diner pancakes at 2 in the afternoon because time is a toy you're allowed to play with if you survive. Claire wore the ring on a chain around her neck, the word facing her skin. "It's a halo," Mason said, "but a private one." That evening, the city staged a sunset that forgave more than it should have. We took the long way home past the bus shelter where I had found Mason. He touched the plexiglass with his palm, like a priest blessing water. "Thank you," he told it. The rain earlier had left puddles that tried to memorize our reflections and failed. Good. I prefer being hard to copy. At home, I found a letter in the mailbox addressed in a hand I didn't recognize. Inside, a note from one of the clinic nurses thanking me for the bridge year and a Polaroid of a group of kids under a banner that read "Community." On the back, someone had written, "Old light does the most good when you aim it." I propped it next to our crest. It belonged. Kane texted that the board would be reassessing leadership alignment. That's corporate for sharpening knives. I looked at Claire, playing Go Fish with Mason on the carpet, and thought of knives as tools. Yes, but not the useful kind. "Let them reassess," I typed back. "I have better meetings." Night fell. The fort hummed with whispered strategy. Claire lay back on the couch, eyes closed, hand on her chest, the chain warm against her throat. I watched her breathe, like a man who has learned the market he cares about is made of lungs, not lines. "Promise me something," she said, without opening her eyes. "Name it. If the board fires you, don't mistake that for losing." "I won't," I said. It was almost true. "But if they do, we'll have more time for pancakes." She smiled, which is how you sign a contract when you've run out of pens. A year to the week after the rain rewrote my life, it rained again. Not a verdict this time, a benediction. Mason insisted we walk. Claire agreed with the caveat that we turn back if her lungs negotiated a ceasefire too soon. We didn't. We made it to the corner deli that smells like fried onions and absolution, and split a paper cup of hot chocolate like conspirators. At the bus shelter, Mason climbed onto the bench and presented the ticket we'd framed, now replaced by a copy because history deserves both a wall and a pocket. He held it aloft like a relic. "I knight this stop," he announced, "for services to our family." Claire applauded. I bowed to the shelter because I have finally learned when ceremony is appropriate. Always. Back home, we cooked apology pancakes for dinner, because I had burned the first batch of grilled cheese again. Claire set the ring. Not on her neck this time, not on her finger, but between us on the table like a word we all understood. We ate around it. It watched us like punctuation. After dishes, I washed, Mason dried, Claire judged. We pulled the couch closer to the bookshelves and retired the fort with a small ceremony. We read the fort rules one last time, added a ninth, 9, retire forts with honors, and folded the blankets the way armies do flags. Mason saluted and didn't cry, and then cried anyway. We let him. Tears are just weather that happens to the face. Later, we walked to the planetarium for a public night. Under the dome, the guide pointed out Orion again and used words like redshift and magnitude. Mason whispered his translation in my ear. Old light that won't quit. Claire leaned against me and breathed through the minor climb without the dragon's help. I never thought listening to someone inhale could feel like applause. On the terrace, with the city unrolled below us, I took the ring and turned it so the engraved word faced the sky. I don't need a better job title, I told them. I don't need Zurich. I don't even need to be right most days. I need this. Us, stupid rules, noodles on Tuesdays, a kid who can make law out of snacks, a woman who taught me to ask for help before I drowned. Claire held out her hand, not as an answer, as an invitation. I slid the ring on. It looked small on her finger and enormous in the air between us. Mason took a Polaroid of us with hands shaking from the weight of the moment and the camera. The picture developed slow. We watched our outlines arrive from the white like divers surfacing. In the corner of the frame, the compass photobombed from his pocket. Of course it did. The past always wants a say. This time, we let it speak, and then we spoke louder. When we got home, we hung the new Polaroid in the crest frame beside the old ones and the ticket. We added the community photo with the kids and the banner, because family is a circle that refuses to obey radius. I wrote our motto on a fresh card in my worst block letters. I'm a billionaire who never learned to write pretty. Good. The card didn't need pretty, it needed true. Stay. Ask for help before you're drowning. Snacks are diplomacy. Tell the truth, even when it's messy. Before bed, Mason stood in the hallway and said, "Good night, family," like a password. We answered together. It rained through the night and into morning. We slept like people who have finally negotiated reasonable terms with their ghosts. When I woke, the city was scrubbed and ordinary, which is to say, beautiful. I made pancakes that didn't need an apology. Claire stole the first one with a grin. Mason declared it a holiday. Name it, I said. He thought for a long, dramatic second. Stay Day, he decided. Fine by me. Some days deserve a name. Some verbs deserve to be holidays, and some stories don't end with fireworks. They end with a small boy at a bus shelter, a woman with a halo you can't see, and a man who finally learned to recognize the richest thing he would ever own, the boring miracle of staying.